Hello and welcome from the International JavaScript Conference 2017 in Munich. My name is Stephanie Schäfers and I'm here with Shmuela Jacobs, who is an independent trainer and consultant and who works also a lot with ngGirls. And today we're going to talk a bit about progressive web apps and mobile apps. Shmuela, thank you for taking your time for the interview. So in your session, you dealt with the world of mobile apps and single-page applications on one side and progressive web apps on the other. What kind of advantages bring mobile apps?
Well, mobile apps are more native to the device itself. They can access all the hardware that you have on the device, like GPS and camera and voice recording, as well as other applications that you have there. For example, the contacts, you can immediately start a phone call out of a native app. But all this is already being implemented also in browsers. So it's something good that the native apps brought to the world, but the web applications are catching up with it. Another thing that is great with native mobile apps is that they're installable and they can engage the users to use them again and again, and the users can trust it to work also offline. But again, these are things that are also being advanced now with progressive web applications. The browsers have these capabilities and they're catching up very quickly.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, web apps work best on steady and fast mobile connections. People tend to use mobile devices even more nowadays because everyone has a smartphone. So these steady connections aren't always available to them. So what kind of requirements are particularly tricky to deal with when it comes to mobile apps on mobile devices? For web apps on mobile devices, I'm sorry.
You have to think in the same way that you think when you develop for a mobile application. The user will not always have internet connection, and sometimes the connection is slow, or you're using 3G or roaming and you don't want to have all the expense for that, like paying too much for your data because it usually costs a lot. Also, bringing a lot of data means also using a lot of the battery, and you don't want to wear off the battery very quickly. So you have to think about those things. But these are things that are also relevant a lot of times when you're using a web application on a regular computer. You also don't want to bring too much data and it will slow down the application. So the methods that you can use is cache some of the data. You know your application the best. You're building it, you know how you want the users to use it. So you can actually tell the browser how to cache the data, what data to cache, what data to release from the cache, because you don't want also to use up all the memory. When to cache it. Maybe it's okay to use an older version of the data that you're presenting, because the updates are not very, very important. So the performance will be much better if you already have a cached version of that. So mainly it's about caching, and there are different methods to do that in the browser. You don't want to rely on the browser to cache things for you, because it will have its own methods, its own ways to do that, its own decisions. You want to be in control of that. So you can cache using the service worker, and you can cache also using the browser's persistent memory, for example, the local storage or IndexedDB.
Yeah. As you said, you don't want to rely too much on the browser to do all the work, so it might be a better idea to develop a native mobile app. Are there many advantages and disadvantages maybe about mobile apps?
Well, so in native mobile app, you do have all the control for yourself. You have the access to the storage in your phone. But now with web applications, you also can do the same thing. You can write your service workers by yourself. You can write the IndexedDB, the data that you cache as a local database, and it will be there. So instead of having to develop different versions of the same application, one for Android, one for Windows Phone, one for iOS, one for the web, you can write your logic once, you can write the application once, of course, with different views, maybe different features that will be used more in mobile or more in the web, and use these advantages that the browser gives you.
Yeah, I think this is also where the progressive web apps come in, because this is kind of the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. So could you maybe give us a quick overview of the biggest advantage that progressive web apps have over other options to develop an app?
Well, one of the advantages, as I see it, is that they're linkable. This means that you can tell about your application in a blog post or in the news and give a link to it, and you don't have to make the users go into the store and search for it. So they just can open it in the browser, and they don't have to go on and install it. They just open it, and then they can see the application, and if they decide that it's nice, then they can install it and have an icon on their mobile device. So as when you're looking at the users, then it's much easier for the users to find your application and to be convinced to use it, because they can try it out without doing real meaningful action, like actually reading the reviews and reading all the permissions that the application needs and then installing it. They can use it first and then decide. So it's much more approachable to the users. On the other hand, it brings a lot of advantages to the developers and the company that develops them as means of resources, the budget. If you can develop the application once and just have little changes between different versions, then it's much easier both for the developers, and it costs, of course, less because it takes less time to develop it and then having different versions of the same application. And you're using also the most advanced features that the web gives you. So you also advance the web in this way. So this is also really great.
Yeah, of course it is. Speaking of developers and the tools that you can use for developing progressive web apps, are there any tools or frameworks that you particularly enjoy using?
Yeah, well, so there are tools that are relevant to all progressive web applications. For example, WebWorker 2 and Lighthouse that measures how progressive your web application is. And there are more tools. They are open source, they're free to use, and they're really great. So they can help you build your manifest, they can help you build your service workers. So instead of having to code the whole thing, to code all the functions that access the cache, the memory, and send notifications, then you just write a JSON file that gives you the option to decide what you want to cache, how you want to cache it, for how long, and then the service worker is just created for you. Of course, you can go inside and also change things by yourself. Now, I know that in frameworks like React and Vue, when you create an application using the CLI, then it already comes with the progressive web features built in. And with Angular, they're trying to do this. In version 5, they will have also the tools baked in. But right now, you use an external library that is also a part of the Angular ecosystem. And it does the same thing for you. You just need to, switch it on and use it. So it's as easy as that. Of course, there are more things that you need to think about. For example, which features will be on the large screen only and which features you'll present on the mobile, and different views, like I said, so you have to have different style for the application. But, you already know how to do this. There are lots of tools. There's Flex Layout and Bootstrap that can help you with that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I think this is a great overview about all the world of mobile apps and progressive web apps. So thank you very much for the interview and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
See you around.